Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 3 by 3 live show. Today, I have a special guest. Actually, it's an intercontinental edition, transatlantic. So there's a time difference of 6 hours, but we did figure it out. Hi, David. Nice to meet you. Very nice to have you here on the show. You're a perception expert. We met each other on LinkedIn. I perceived that you talk about perception, which is a topic that I'm hugely interested in. More specifically, your field of expertise is perception management and perceptual mapping. Can you explain to us what that is?
Absolutely. First of all, hello everybody, and thank you, Richie, for having me on. This is quite an honor. And greetings from America here at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, perception management, as it relates specifically to marketing, is all about interrupting the way people think and feel about a product, a service, a brand, a person, a company, a color, whatever. And because of the internet, there's a million ways to interrupt. And then right after that interruption, positioning what you have and then managing how it's perceived from that moment on. That is perception management in its simplest terms. Obviously, there's more applications. In personal terms, perception management is about garbage in, garbage out. You want to change the way things are in your life, you have to change the way you are perceiving things. If you change your perceptions, obviously you can change your outcomes and change what's possible. Perceptual mapping is specific. It's a tool that's used in marketing and feasibility studies and product development studies and things. It's a proprietary method of market research that gives you more information about the market, your potential customers, than you could ever expect. And we follow a very clear, simple process. But what perceptual mapping does is it provides you enough information that gives you the best chance of positioning your product in any given market. And it involves primary one-on-one interview research, or it can do, we can do focus group research, but we call that the now research. Everyone wants to jump on and have AI find all the research that's available on the web. And that's a great tool. And it gives you half of the story. It tells you what was, everything historic, what the trends are, and what the, market dynamics are. You need to get from live research. Then you marry the two, and that gives you enough information to make a map. And that map is your road, kind of your roadmap, if you will, the way to get to the voice and tone that has the best chance of resonating with your targets. But it also tells you the right target you should be going after. And what I find with a lot of clients is that they have a client in mind that they believe is their ideal client. And then when we do the perceptual mapping, we find out it's the wrong direction to go. So you have this voice and tone, but you also learn the right messaging that will get someone to modify behavior and take an action. And that's kind of it in a very small nutshell.
Super, super interesting. If I understand you correctly, we have to work with what's there because, we cannot directly influence the perception of people. So you need to be very clear about how you are perceived. So that would be the first stage. And based on that, you would then plan your marketing, plan your campaigns, and also can you tell us an example how because I find it super interesting when people have a wrong target audience in mind, because if that is the case, everything that happens later on is probably bound to fail, right?
Well, it's interesting. I just finished a pretty large, it ended up being nearly 200 pages of information with a client who has not yet launched. It's a new service. And what he wanted was kind of two things. He wanted to see the feasibility, the probability of success, which we do specific modeling after perceptual mapping that gives you a percentage, like it's 60% chance of success, 80% chance. Well, for this particular client, he was hoping he would go after affluent males, 65 years and older. And really, we went out to test that. And so we did one-on-one research with the identified type of males. We did one-on-one research with alternatives, females. We did one-on-one research with different age groups after multiple one-to-one interviews, because this didn't really lend itself to do big focus groups. What we learned was three things. First, we learned all their buying habits. We learned where they shop, the clothes they wear, the cars they drive, the incomes they have, how many kids they have. Do their kids go to private school, regular school? We learned everything about these folks and how to communicate to them, what words can resonate, because where they shop, what their attitudes are, how they dress, all that matters. Because if they're buying Rolex watches and not Timex watches, something in the marketing and something in the reputation of Rolex spoke to them and got an emotional response. And so they bought. And that's why they don't buy something a little bit less expensive. So we have this information. What we found is that really his best targets should be women in their 40s.
Wow, that is a huge
He
difference.
wanted men, affluent men, certain income, homeowners. But what we found was it was much more focused, and he had a much better chance of success with women in their 40s. But this is really important when you're dealing in perception management. Now that we know, doesn't mean he can't go after men in their 40s. It means he would have to modify the service and modify the direction of how he markets to them. But I'm never going to say no. If that's somebody's target that they're just dead set in their head, regardless of what the information shows, all I can do is recommend. But if they're really focused on wanting to go after, we can develop the right strategy that can give them the best chance of success. But it's kind of my fiduciary responsibility to let them know that it won't be as successful as if you went after the correct target. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. It reminds me of a famous example in traditional advertising. I think it was Old Spice. They would advertise to males, to buy their aftershave or shower gel or whatever. But then at some point, somebody had the genius idea to actually market those products, which were clearly made for males exclusively, to women. Changing the hook, basically make your man smell good. And
Yes.
that totally increased the amount of products that they could sell.
So it's really interesting. That's a wonderful example. There's another one called Axe, AXE, that started off with just a small deodorant. And the way they marketed it was they were focusing on the 18 to 24-year-old male. And if you sprayed it and walked past a beautiful woman, she would pay attention. And of course, sales grew and exploded. But then they modified and started adding gels and bath and the hair stuff and everything, but they incorporated it how you'll be cool. And so other men will admire how cool you are, not just women, and they expanded. And that to me is a great example of perception management. You've heard the phrase, probably we all have, and everyone watching or listening to this has, you get one chance to make a good first impression. And although technically that is true, but because of the internet, because of technology, you have a million chances to modify that perception. People love to forgive, and people always forget. That's worth repeating. People love to forgive, and they always forget. So if you say something, for example, that really rubs somebody the wrong way, they might even have found it offensive. But then you said, hey, Richie, I'm really sorry. Thank you for your patience with me. That's not at all what I intended. You tend to want to forgive. And what's great is within 2 or 3 days, you're on to the next thing. You've forgotten it. I always tell people, if you ever, and this is when I do some one-on-one consulting in perception management, whether it's a business or whether it's somebody in a relationship or whether it's something in a sport, you have to have what I call the memory of a goldfish. But for everything, if someone gives you a high five, hey, great job, appreciate that, feel good for about a minute or two, and then realize that the reason why they gave you that is that they would like to see that behavior continue, right? Well, the same holds true if you get something negative. wow, David, I sure didn't like the way your glasses look today. I wish you wouldn't have worn them. You know, all your pictures don't have glasses in them. Well, I can let that bother me all day, but that's useless. What's better is that I realize that, wow, they told me that because they're wanting to modify behavior and get a better outcome. It's nothing personal. And then I need to forget it. Obviously implement it, but then I need to forget it. And if people stop taking things personally and look at what and really perceive what's really happening, that someone is taking the time to try to make you better, how can you not get excited about that, whether it's a good thing that they've told you or a bad thing, right?
So what you're saying is, and I can only double underline that, especially insights or such things, everything that triggers us, it's more based in us. And it's the same way the other way around. When we communicate, we need to find something that resonates. And I found it out the hard way. We are just almost millennials. So we've lived on the interwebs for quite a while. And actually, before I started going all in on LinkedIn, I authored a blog. And for many years, I wrote about blogging mostly, so very meta, very self-referential. But I explained how to implement certain functions, how to use certain plugins. But I tried to reach heads of marketing. They don't program their websites themselves, and it took me quite a couple of years to figure out that I need to find out what my audience is interested in. And
Mm-hmm.
we haven't even talked about LinkedIn yet, but everything you said is 100% applicable to LinkedIn strategy.
It is.
These days, since the platform has become so popular, we constantly hear these terms like personal branding, social selling, content strategy. And I sometimes think that some people believe these are exclusive to LinkedIn. But what you're saying here, these are very general principles,
They
but
are.
especially about how to deal with criticism. I think there is one additional factor. Of course, you need to consider who criticizes you. You cannot take every kind of
Yeah.
criticism seriously. So let's say you are publishing a video series, couple of people like it, and some people, less people say, "Hey, I really hate your videos." And then you need to figure out some kind of balance, right?
Right. Well, it's interesting. And I'm actually glad you kind of called me out on that. When I talk about critique, that's different than what I call throwing shade. Somebody that doesn't like that you don't know or are not really associated with that throws shade, that throws doubt. Usually people do this for three reasons. At least it's been my experience. And it's probably let me just take a minute to let people understand. I've been in sales and marketing now for more than 35 years. I have kind of three separate careers. I have almost a dozen years in sales and sales leadership, all the way up to running regions in the US, to then I got into marketing and started off as a product manager and grew all the way to head of marketing for North America for very large multi-billion-dollar biotech and medical device firms. And then I went on the agency side for almost 10 years, working for large New York agency as vice president and client relations specialist. But there's been one thing that's been very constant. When people throw shade, it's because they're jealous, legitimately jealous. They wish they could do what you're doing. And so for some strange reason, or mind sometimes can be wired, if I can say something negative, it makes me feel a little bit better, but only for a few seconds. The second reason is because they are actually enviable. There's a difference between being jealous and enviable. They're envious because they believe what you're saying, but they don't know how to communicate it well on their side. So by throwing something negative, they're hoping to engage, and you'll throw back an answer in a better explanation. And most people answer back, and they're a little what I call snarky in the US. That's kind of being a smart aleck and not, and that's not what that person who threw shade was looking for. Maybe the first guy, but not the second. And then the third reason people throw shade is because they don't understand what you're promoting or who you are or what your brand is. They don't understand. And so when people don't understand things, they react a lot of ways, viscerally, or they use poor judgment or whatever. But I found over 35 years, those are the three main reasons that people that don't know you and most of the time, interestingly enough, If it's a product, they've never even used the product yet. They're throwing so much negativity to the person marketing it.
You should turn that into an infographic, a printable one,
I should.
attachable
I should.
next to the screen, because you know that these reasons, I think they can lead to a lot more relaxation when using social media.
So, and you had mentioned, LinkedIn. So my strategy on LinkedIn has been very simple. So personal branding is really important, but let's call it what it is. Personal branding is a tactic. Okay. Everyone keeps, and I see this all over LinkedIn, people get mixed up between tactics and strategy. Personal branding is a tactic. Um, Using a logo, that's a tactic. That's not a brand. That doesn't brand you. Using social media is a tactic. All these are tactics. And you see the personal branding gurus on LinkedIn that have 50, 100, 50,000 followers. But that's because they're focused on the vanity metrics of LinkedIn. They're focused on get as many as impressions as you can. Let's get people to let's get as many followers. But oftentimes that honestly doesn't yield to solid business. It just doesn't. And that, a 25-year-old may try to tell you differently, but this 60-year-old with 35 years of wisdom, I can attest, I know it factually. The second thing is that, yes, you want to have an optimized profile. Some of the stuff they're saying makes perfect sense. They go and they land on your profile, and that is kind of your large business card. I get that. And so does everybody now. And you can find about a million, literally a million people that will help you optimize your profile. Each one does a little bit different, but they're all correct. So find something that's comfortable, make your profile look good, but you don't have to like agonize over it. Once it's made, it will start speaking for you. And mine does. And like in the features section, don't have more than just 3 things. I try to have an immediate call to action where someone can book with me. I talk about my book, and then I show my website. Sometimes I pull out the website and I put in a recent blog, but I keep it simple, just 3 things. And there's a lot of people who say, just do one, just do your offer. But the thing is, if you just do your offer, you're not really showing and showcasing who you are. I also don't believe you need to tell a story in all of your past jobs. LinkedIn also is a great resume, but your most recent, what you're doing now, maybe a story is appropriate. So let me tell you quickly my journey. I was a LinkedIn lurker since 2009. I was the guy that used it as a resume or a wall of fame to put every time I won a marketing award, every time I got published in a journal, I put it on LinkedIn and let the world know, and nobody cared. Nobody cared, except recruiters. What people don't understand, there's about 30 million recruiters on LinkedIn. They're the number one users of the platform, maybe 20 to 1 to everybody else. To everyone else. Another statistic, and I'm not pulling these out of the air, they're real, is that there's now 1.1 billion registered users, a little bit more actually on LinkedIn. Less than 1 million use it every day. Less than 200,000 post at all. Less than 35,000 even respond or make any comments, and only about 10,000 people even go into DMs. So 10,000 people out of 1.1 billion. I get excited because that means opportunity, but I also recognize it means that it's not that big a deal. LinkedIn is one of many actionable platforms, but I treat it like a referral platform, not an inbound lead platform. People such as yourself say, oh, I know someone that does perceptual mapping. I got this contact. And I can say, I know somebody in Austria that knows the European market. I've got this wonderful contact, Richie. And that's how most of my business comes from. So I was a LinkedIn lurker. And then I retired last December, a year ago now, from an agency that I helped build from the ground up. I was the 12th employee, and it went from 12 to now, I think they have 65 or 70. And they're a $25+ million company. when they were only about a 1.5 million when we took it. And that was a sense of pride, and I feel good legacy there. But I was the older guy. The CEO at the time, I want to say, was 28.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
He started it when he was 18, so it was pretty impressive. And then he started hiring employees only about maybe 5 years. And then, like I said, I was the 12th. And so it was pretty exciting to see this entrepreneurial spirit. But we just started drifting apart in things that I believe would work versus him. And I thought, I'm going to be 60. Let's take a break. Well, that break lasted until March of this year. And then I thought, okay, I can't be retired. What do I have to offer? And so a couple partners and I were having some coffee at Starbucks, and he said, let's start our own firm. Two of them are doing it more side hustle. I'll be the managing partner. We've already got great connections with multiple ad agencies to do classic ad work or graphic arts or social media and all that, which we were not interested in. We were interested in more fractional marketing where they could buy chunks of our time to really bring them real guidance. But I wanted to get perceptual mapping out there. I wanted to create, and we have two proprietary products, market-based and product-based, that use perceptual mapping, which is proprietary, to help you do market opportunity assessments like the one I just finished, to help you, where should you go in the next market? What should the next product look like? How you develop? And so in March, we started mapping out what that would look like. And I started doing a lot of pre-marketing activities. Hey, and at the same time, I had just finished a book on perception management called Woosh Things Up a Bit, The Principles of Perception Management.
Highly recommended read.
Like
I read it in preparation of this live. Yeah.
And it's like, I wrote it in a way so it's just like I'm having a conversation with you right now. It's like this is a podcast in a book. And all it does is it clearly helps you understand what perception management is and perceptual mapping and how it works in business and everyday life. So it gets published, I want to say around June. It's on all the platforms, start selling. I'm not promoting, but I am talking about it. Next thing I know, I have about, in March, I want to say 930 connections and about 960 followers. And I did nothing. I changed no behavior, except I started posting 4 times a week. And not even at the same time, just on Monday and Tuesday, I try to be informational or correctional. If I see something that is not correct that I'm seeing on LinkedIn, I post a correction and why someone should care. Usually it's about personal branding. It's about ghostwriting. And a lot of times it's controversial. And those get a lot more traction and a lot more shade in my DMs, but that's okay because that's just what I'm trying to do. And then on Tuesdays, I try to provide examples of work or stories of things that have worked for me or didn't work for me. And then Wednesday, I do nothing. I don't even get on the platform. On Thursday, I do what I call a perception maker moment video. And this is usually about 2 to 2.5 minutes of some kind of wisdom. In instance, yesterday, you know what that one was.
Yeah, yeah. Love the video.
The bottom line is that you tell something. I try to tell something personal, but not too probative for people to get to know me better. And then on Fridays, Fedora Friday, I post something fun, usually a piece of wisdom or a story or talk about a good cigar and a wine, but just to give people a little bit of a snapshot into who I am just as a human being. So they know what I can do. They know who I am, and they know what kind of person, I'm just the dude down the street that you want to do business with. And just started doing that consistently. But I also wasn't ashamed. I don't spend 2 hours answering DMs, answering comments, but I started looking at posts of people that I thought were making good sense, whether they were personal branding, where they were sticking out and giving advice that really resonated and I think really could work. And I would start making comments, but I wouldn't just say, oh yeah, that's great, I agree 100%. I would actually try to add value. That's great. I agree 100%. May I also add, or if there is a part I disagree with, wow, this is fantastic. Can I push back just a little bit? And I'd insert something. Well, I started getting more traction. People would answer back. They DM me. And then in the DMs, I started reaching out. If I invite you to connect and you accept, you're getting a personal video or a personal voice message from me. If someone's just sending me a connection request, I do read it. I do go to your profile and I click accept if it's where I can bring you value or you can bring me value. I'm not one of these, I guess they call them lions, where I'll just accept anything just
No,
because I
no,
want to grow
that
my
makes no sense.
network. Because the whole purpose is for me and my partner, Bob Sager, on our podcast is legacy. What are we doing that when we stop doing this, what's being left behind? So I grew and grew and grew. And suddenly, about a month ago, I hit 9,000 followers. And I just woke up one day, there it was. And I thought, wow, I didn't do anything special. I'm not trying to, I never know how many impressions I'm going to get. I get anywhere from 2 to 10,000 impressions a week on all four combined. I get anywhere from 50 to 300 comments, but I'm not doing it for any of the measurable vanity checks. All I want is good conversation, but good leads through DMs, and I'm getting them. And something else, one statistic I have learned, maybe the most important, is that if you can do live connections, like I had an opportunity, I'm going to throw out a big name here. Jasmine Alec is very well known. He's
Yes.
a couple 100,000 followers. He charges over $1,000 an hour for his services. Came to Atlanta. I had a chance to break bread with him. I've got pictures to prove it. We spent several hours together. He's the real deal.
Did you have a
And
burger?
we
I
did.
know,
We
Jasmine
had
loves burgers.
a smash burger. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
great, great, great.
It was fantastic. The reason why I share this is that he really does walk the talk, but he's been doing this for 15 years. All those that say I started in August and now I've got 100,000 followers, that's just baloney. They didn't do that. They might have
They
started.
bought them. A lot
Yeah,
of them bought them, and maybe they are not even aware of how damaging that is.
yeah.
But David, I need to come back to something that you said, and I find it really, really interesting because for some reason, your topics, like I said, I'm interested in perception. I found your profile very inviting. But now that you've talked about LinkedIn, there is actually such a huge overlap what you're saying and what I teach in my trainings. But you're not the LinkedIn expert, but I want to add something about selling on LinkedIn. I'm in a very specific situation because once a friend of mine said, and I totally agree, you know what sells best on LinkedIn? LinkedIn coaching. So this is why the platform converts very well for me. But I recently also experimented with other social media, and we here in Europe we have we get more numbers because I don't know if you know it, the European Union passed a set of laws. These are called DSA, Digital Services Act, and they basically what they say is that the big platforms, those who reach at least, I think, 15% of the European population per quarter, need to publish information about their moderation efforts, about removed content, but also about active users. And there is this number, MAUs, monthly active users. LinkedIn needs to publish those only for European Union countries. Germany,
Interesting.
Austria, and these MAUs, these are not daily users, but users who log in at least once a month. It's not a lot of activity. So in Austria and Germany, this is about 1/4 and 1/3 of the numbers that LinkedIn communicates. I always like to show these numbers because it's exactly like you say, there is a huge inactive group, and it's actually a much smaller group of people who we are working with here, but most of them are in their industries, influencers or at least multipliers. So that's very specific. Very few people understand that. Yeah, I think we could instantly do a LinkedIn workshop together.
I actually believe that. And I don't profess to really be an expert on LinkedIn. I can only share what I have found, what I have learned, and how I incorporate that and process that with what's happened to me historically. All I do know is this, is that I don't use anyone else to write any content for me. I am not against ghostwriting, but we need to be super clear. That is not authentic, having someone else do the work for you. It will never be authentic, even if they get your voice and tone. That's not me throwing shade. That's just fact. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If you don't have time and you've got a business outside of LinkedIn to run, of course. And I don't ever profess to be a LinkedIn coach because I don't coach people or even tell anybody how to use LinkedIn. My business is all outside. I work with customers that are trying to turn around products or brands or personal branding. If someone comes to me and say, my personal branding isn't resonating, I don't know what to do. Here's what we do: a perceptual map. We fix it. I give them the how to implement, but I don't do any of the implementation for them. Either they hire somebody or they do it themselves. I really focus on really providing what a consultant in a consulting firm should be, and that's support for whatever the business needs.
I can only agree. David,
I
thank
would
you very
love,
much.
I'd
I
love to
have,
partner with you to do a course.
yeah, me too. And also, we need to continue this. These 30 minutes passed really quickly. Let's kick off 2025 with another
I'd love
live.
it.
Thank you very much for being here. I wish you wonderful Christmas holidays, happy Hanukkah, and yeah, I hope to talk to you soon. In the
Thank you very
meanwhile,
much. Happy New Year,
we will
everybody.
meet.
Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you
Thank
next